Welcome to the Performance Bike Scoop, the live talk show that we have here every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we talk about all the things that are happening in our neck of the world that we're excited about, that we want to share with you. I'm your host, Zach Terry. This is Eddie Jones. How are you doing, Eddie?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
It's been a little while, but you're no stranger to the Bike Scoop. The last
That's
time
true.
we were talking about the Garmin.
Yes, I believe the Garmin Edge 1030
That's
had
right.
just come out.
That's right. Today, Eddie's joining us, and we're going to be talking about riding gravel. So Eddie has a gravel race coming up this weekend.
I do,
So it's a new hot topic that's current and relevant. Now, that being said, gravel has been around for a really long time, right?
As long as there have been bicycles and dirt roads, gravel cycling has been around.
So it's absolutely nothing new at all. Was it the Strada Bianchi had a gravel section last week, but that's kind of one of the only pro races I think that the pros are riding gravel in.
Yeah, and that one's really, kind of marketed as a gravel race. There's some hard packed gravel roads that they ride through, so it's it's up to the pro levels. There's gravel racing.
Yeah, not to be confused with the Spring Classics where there's cobblestones that are coming up. Riding cobbles is like way harder than riding gravel, right?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the conditions, the cobbles and the gravel, but certainly more taxing.
Gotcha. So let's talk about the types of gravel riding that that we do see that are very common. I think one of the first one is just heading out and exploring, right?
Right. Yeah. So kind of if you think of gravel riding as going out on a road bike where you're kind of unencumbered by where you want to go. That's what we would consider gravel biking. So adventure riding, certainly if you're bike packing, you want to load your bike up and get out into the wilderness, especially where there are no cars. Dirt roads are certainly a way to go about that. Even as like you look at commuting, if you want to take alternate routes. I live in Raleigh, Performance is in Chapel Hill. I can go straight through Umstead State Park when I want to ride my bike to work. Umstead is full gravel roads. Jumping on a gravel bike, I can cut right through the park, no problem.
Save you some time, too.
Save some time, kind of cut out going around, and it's more fun. Yeah,
there's also Gran Fondos, which have been super popular over the last, 6 years, 8 years. They've really popped up. They've been around for a while. I did the Jeremiah Bishop Gran Fondo is a really popular one that we can get to pretty quick. The difference with Gran Fondos and gravel races, though, which you have coming up this weekend, is that Gran Fondos are much more kind of ride at your own pace, except there are some timed sections, and each race is a little bit different. But sometimes it's just the climbs are timed, sometimes it's the whole thing. But a gravel race like you're doing this weekend is the whole thing's timed, right?
Yeah, mass start, so start to finish, first person across the finish line wins.
Yeah, that's awesome. So super exciting.
Yeah.
So Eddie, why do you like to ride gravel?
Yeah, so I've been mountain biking for as long as I can remember. Got into road biking, so I like the technicality and the skills and kind of sliding around on a mountain bike, but I also like riding in a group and riding super fast. And so when I can do that but still get loose through the turns, to me that's like the most fun type of riding that you can do.
Yeah, you mentioned getting loose. I think that's probably like one of the biggest defining things about riding gravel as far as how the bike feels underneath you.
Right.
It can be a weird experience your first time, right?
Oh, yeah. Certainly if you're coming from the road bike world where, you want to maintain traction, kind of that idea that going through the turns, you feel like you're floating over the road where you're kind of just sliding along the gravel is a very unusual sensation.
Yeah, and it's different for mountain biking too, because mountain biking, a lot of times you have like 2.35 tires and above, 2 inches and above, whatever your personal preference is. And as you're going in, like the sidewalls are catching those turns and everything. And, and with full suspension bikes, you actually get a ton of traction when mountain biking, depending on where you are. But yeah, I mean, you ride a gravel road and you have like thousands of little rocks that you're just like kind of skirting on top
stuff's
of.
moving underneath of you. Certainly you can be kicking up rocks as you go.
Yeah.
Traction is kind of it is a benefit that you don't always get, but it's fun.
Right. So I guess if it's someone's first time heading out to ride gravel, first off, where would they find the gravel? I think every region is a little bit different. In some places, there's tons of gravel roads.
Right.
Around here, it's a little bit harder for us to find a gravel road. And, I guess just a word to wise, if you're heading out and you see a gravel road, just make sure that it's like a public road, because there's a lot of private driveways that are gravel roads. So
right.
You can't always just turn down the first one that you see. But
right.
I think with a little pre-planning, you can usually pretty good routes, right?
Right, yeah. So, if you live in an urban area, a lot of times state parks will have unpaved gravel roads. Like I mentioned, Umstead State Park right here in the heart of Raleigh. We've got 20 plus miles of gravel roads, so that's a great option. If you live, in more rural areas, some state fire roads are often a good choice. And, every now and then you'll just hit a little section. We've got a section right down the street from the office. It's an entrance to a neighborhood that they cut through, and it hasn't been paved for a few years, so it's hard packed gravel. So we've got about 1.5 miles of gravel that we ride every day on our way to ride at lunch.
Yeah, it's super fun. So again, before you head out, maybe if it's your first time, just give the local map a browse. Maybe you're driving past. Maybe you have friends. Again, a lot of the courses that are preset. I mean, that's pretty easy. It's a destination event kind of thing. But I'd say before you ride for the first time in like a big race on a big day, like go and test out the waters. Get on the bike, ride it, start slow, maybe the first time. And I've definitely kind of like washed out, my first time. Like my front wheels washed out a couple of times going around turns. So for me personally, it takes me, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, each season when I go ride gravel again for the first time. If it's been several months, it takes me a minute to remember, the riding technicality details.
Kind of remembering how to handle your bike, right?
Yeah. But then after like that 15, 20 minutes, it becomes natural again, and it's super fun, like you said, getting super loose.
Yeah.
So let's talk about types of bikes. So, we're going to jump into, two specific examples here, but I think it's really important just to say that like you can ride any bike that you want on gravel roads for the most part, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you ride gravel a lot, so what are some of the bikes that you've seen out there?
Yeah, so I've ridden through Umstead on my road bike with 25 millimeter tires. Obviously, cyclocross bikes are a great choice. The purpose-built gravel bikes that are becoming popular now, mountain bikes, perfectly capable gravel machines, and even fat bikes. It's really depending on the, I guess, level of kind of chunkiness and gnarliness of the gravel, almost any bike should be able to get you from point A to point B.
Yeah, and like one of the Grand Fondas that I did, there's an 18-mile gravel climb up in West Virginia, and I think the first time I did it, I just had a road bike with 25 millimeter gator skins on it, and it totally did the job. It was great. If I had a little bit wider tires, maybe some disc brakes back then, it maybe would have made it a little bit easier, but I didn't necessarily need that extra stuff to do it.
Right.
So I think we just want to drive that point that you can go ride gravel pretty much on any machine that you already have.
Yep.
But if N+1 is in your vocabulary and something that you're concerned about, let's run through some of the bikes here. So this is your race machine that you're coming up on this week?
Yes. So
this weekend?
This is actually a cyclocross bike, and I've made a few minor tweaks to it so that it's a capable gravel bike. So the good thing about cyclocross bikes is that they come with wider tire clearances to run cyclocross tires. So that usually means you can run a wider tire for gravel. It gives you a little more cushion, especially if you're looking to go tubeless and you're not going to have to worry about flatting on, a rock or something. The reason I chose a cyclocross bike is that this is a short race this weekend, relatively short. It's only 50 miles. There's, I believe, about 5,000 feet of climbing. So I wanted something that was going to be super lightweight. The carbon is going to be a little bit stiffer. I'm not really worried about being uncomfortable over the long haul, looking at a 3-hour finish time. So having something more aggressive, stiffer, and lighter is the way I've chosen to go with that bike.
Gotcha. Are there any big changes that you made to this bike from going from cyclocross race season into this gravel?
Yeah, so first things first, when I race cyclocross, I run tubular tires, pretty much a staple in the cyclocross world. I'm going tubeless tires on here. I am running cyclocross file treads because I want the fast rolling, but also there's a chance that it could be raining and muddy, so I've got the side knobs. I've changed my pedals out. Instead of running mountain bike pedals, I'm actually running road pedals.
For this particular
race.
Because it's a race, you probably aren't going to spend too much time off the bike.
Right, I don't anticipate having to get off the bike. It's short enough where I shouldn't have to stop at any aid station, so I don't have to worry about unclipping. I'll have a stiffer pedaling platform. And I think my road shoes are a little more comfortable than my mountain shoes, so I'll be using those for this race.
Very cool. And then if we compare this to the Marin that's above it, there's pretty big differences here, mainly I think when we look at the wheel set and the tires that are on it. So you have 700C, wheel set, and then this bike has a 27.5 wheel set,
Right.
with much bigger tires on it. So what are the benefits of this Marin setup over your setup here?
Right. So, with anything, if you're running bigger tires, you're going to have better traction and more comfort.
Right.
So, if you're riding over stuff that's really rocky, really bumpy, because you have a larger volume tire, that's going to act like suspension. So, if you think of a
Gotcha.
basketball bouncing when it kind of deflects, hitting the bottom, that's what those tires are going to do to soak up some of that bump. Also, this aluminum frame here should help dampen some of the road vibration that you normally get from a carbon bike. So overall, that's probably going to be a more comfortable, smoother riding bike.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the gear range real quick on these. The cassettes on here are massive. Like they pretty much look like a mountain bike cassette. So that's where we're talking about blending kind of like a road and mountain setup into one machine here based on your personal preferences. What cassette are you running in the back there?
So that is an 11-speed, 11-tooth to 42-tooth rear
Okay.
cassette. So that is a straight mountain bike cassette. It's a Shimano XT cassette that I've put on there. But I've paired it up front with a road crank and a
Okay.
42-tooth chainring.
Because you're doing a race this weekend, you want to go faster.
Right.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
right?
So
and again, it's
lighter,
on hard
stiffer
packed
crank, right.
gravel roads.
Hard packed gravel roads. So I've got the big gear in the back because there's going to be a lot of uphill, and I don't want to have to mash the pedals. I want to spin. So I've got that easy gear to spin up the hills, and then I've got the little gear when I'm going down.
Cool. And then the range on here looks to be an 11. What we said it was a 48, I believe.
No, this one looks to be fairly similar to mine, possibly an 1142 or 1144. I haven't
Gotcha.
counted, but it's a very similar setup where you have your 1x drivetrain in the front, your mountain bike chainring in the back. But with the derailleurs coming out now that can handle larger rear cassettes, people are putting upwards of a 50-tooth cassette on a
Wow.
gravel bike.
We'll try so climb and track.
Oh, absolutely.
Like gravel specific components, would you just totally recommend it? We were talking earlier about disc brakes being pretty
Right.
important, right?
Yeah, so the great thing about disc brakes is that when bikes, especially road bikes, started switching over to having disc brakes, all of a sudden you lost that limiter on your tire clearance. Oftentimes
Right.
it was the actual brake caliper. You couldn't put much bigger than a 28 millimeter tire on there. Now, because you don't have that limiter, you can go upwards, well, you can really put a tire as big as you want on.
Yeah.
So from a gravel standpoint, now you can put wider tires on. Bikes can be spec'd out of the gate with much bigger, much more comfortable tires. Certainly you have side knobs as you look to get more traction that would take up space. So all of those things have kind of contributed to this evolution of the gravel bike. Another component that's becoming somewhat specific to the gravel market are the wider and flared handlebars.
Right. I've seen a lot of those. More stability.
Right. So, you think where your brake hoods are, as you come down into your drops, it flares out a little bit. So that wider grip, similar to a mountain bike
Right.
handlebar, being wider, you're going to have more control, more comfort. You're going to be able to move the bike around. And on top of that, you've got all kinds of different hand positions now.
Right.
If you're doing a race that's upwards of 100, 150 miles, you can move to all these different positions on the bike to stay comfortable.
Cool. Tubeless tires are also probably really a good benefit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not necessarily required, but you're riding gravel, so there's lots of rocks, and it'd be easier to get a pinch flat if you have a tube in there.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's the same benefits that we see in the mountain bike world. You can run lower pressures, which means, more traction, more comfort, and you're also going to avoid those pinch flats. So that's less time off the bike repairing a tube.
Cool. And lastly, are there any gravel-specific accessories outside of the components? I see a lot of handlebar bags.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's nothing that I would say is gravel specific,
Right.
but there are certainly things that have, been adopted by the gravel base and the guys who ride gravel.
Yeah.
Certainly bags and things that you can mount on your bike that don't require a rack. We see a lot of the handlebar bags, the frame bags, the rear seat posts becoming popular.
Yeah.
And that's because oftentimes these bikes, like this cyclocross race bike here, it doesn't have mounts for racks. So the only option that I would have would be a non-rack mounted bag, and a lot of companies and brands are coming out with solutions to those problems. So I could load this bike up, take off in the woods for a few days, and have everything I need.
Cool. That's awesome. So you have a race coming up this weekend?
I do,
You feeling
yeah.
good about it?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well, cool,
the
man.
Love Valley Roubaix. It leaves out of Love Valley. It's kind of an old western town,
awesome.
about 2.5 hours west of here in the foothills.
Cool.
So we'll be
Cool.
taking off and riding some mountains and some dirt.
Awesome. Well, good luck, Eddie. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise. Glad to be here.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions later, feel free to comment, and we'll go back and answer them as we can. Again, this is the Performance Bike Scoop. It happens every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Zach Terry. Today I was joined by Eddie Jones, one of our product guys, talking about the ins and outs of gravel. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about which mountain bike should I get. And we're going to show off some of the new Marin bikes that we have. Yeah, all of them, N+1. So thanks for following along. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. All right, cheers. Instagram